What's good, everybody? Welcome to the breakdown. Thank you so much for checking out the episode. Make sure you hit the like button on your way in. Today, we're going to dive into ICE a little bit more. We're going to take a look at them and what they do and all that. And we understand that there has been in recent weeks or recent days, as I record this, some shootings, and we're going to examine those and all that. So, my name is Dr. L. Again, welcome to the breakdown, trying to break down all things law enforcement, some things that deal with the community, some things that deal with politics. And so today we're going to take a look at ICE. So let's put this on the screen here. What is ICE? What do they do? Who is these people, right? So here's some frequently asked questions. We're going to go over to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That's what ICE stands for, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And we're going to put up on the screen here our ICE. So they have a list of frequently asked questions here. Why does ICE? I'm not going to go through all these, right? Let's see. Do ICE officials need to show warrants to the public? ICE law enforcement officers cannot show the warrants they are executing to people who aren't named or involved. Often, law enforcement sensitivities and concerns require officials to keep this information under wraps. I'm not sure about how much I would take any of this or whether at value, how true any of this is. I was obviously well, maybe it's not obvious, but I had some trouble issues with the Trump administration. So let's go to this one. Why do ICE officials wear masks? ICE law enforcement officers wear masks to prevent doxing. If you're not familiar with that particular term, it's when people put all of your information on the internet for others to see and or to target you. Right? I'm against all that type of stuff. I don't believe that anyone should be doxxed. I don't believe that anyone's information should be immediately searchable via the internet. I don't think anyone's should be. I talked before about this that on my time, or well, maybe before my time, during my time, when I was a young buck, right? We had these things called phone books, and in those phone books, you could have not only someone's phone number, where you could look up somebody's name and figure out their phone number, but also they would sometimes have people's addresses. So sometimes we would call up and say, "Take my name and my address out of here." Right? I want it as a private listing or whatever, in order to get that done. And I think I think that ought to be the default for everyone. So, which can and has placed them and their families at risk. All ICE law enforcement officers carry badges and credentials and will identify themselves when required for public safety or legal necessity. That's what it says. Let's see if they do that. I don't know. Are ICE really police? ICE officials are federal law enforcement officers. All ICE law enforcement officers go through extensive academy training to do their job as safely and effectively as possible. Is ICE snatching and kidnapping people off the streets? ICE doesn't kidnap people. Everyone in ICE custody is accounted for, and you can search the online detainee locator system or contact the local field office to find someone you're looking for. There's questions about all this, and we're going to get into that concerning what they do and whether they're disappearing people and all that. Does everyone get due process? Why won't ICE law enforcement tell me what's going on? I'm quite sure this is going to have to do with bound by privacy laws to protect the communities, detainees, and themselves. I'm not buying that as an answer. Not buying that as an answer. Police officers can also get doxxed. Police officers can have the responsibility. It may not be a legal responsibility, but it certainly helps with transparency purposes to tell people what's going on in the communities and in the neighborhoods. And the problem that I have with ICE officers in these contexts and what's going on in LA and different places and going to Home Depot and farms and all this type of stuff is when they take this type of attitude that they're bound by privacy laws, right? Um, anybody within law enforcement could say anything like that, but there's a certain thing about transparency, and when the lack of transparency is there, that's when people are going to start having issues with police. And taught a class called police legitimacy. If police want to be seen, and they're claiming to be police officers or law enforcement officers, want to have police legitimacy, which would go straight into police cooperation or civilians cooperating with the police, then they should exhibit a certain amount of transparency, and that includes answering questions, not having their faces masked, not having to ask for identifications, but clearly visible badges with names and ID numbers, etc. ICE and Customs, ICE and U.S. Customs and Border Patrol are different agencies, but they're both part of the Department of Homeland Security. ICE investigates immigration and customs violations and enforces immigration law in the U.S. Interior. CPD focuses on border security, enforces immigration laws at and between ports of entry. So that's just a little bit about them. Again, I do have issues with the way they're operating. I don't have a problem with them as part as law enforcement. Again, the transparency, the masks, lack of identifiable uniform. I have issues with all that, but that's for another day. So we're going to take a look at Jasmine Crockett here and what she has said recently. Representative Jasmine Crockett, what she has said recently about ICE being a modern day slave patrol. So if you're not familiar, and this is something that needs to be really understood by vast numbers of people. This is Trump escalates his use of troops in U.S. cities. Representative Jasmine Crockett, ICE raids are modern day slave patrols, and Trump wants more of them. So slave patrols are the precursor of the U.S. law enforcement system. It is the precursor. It is the beta version of modern day policing. Modern day policing in the United States, and I would say in many other places, Brazil, another place, it was about those individuals who were commandeered to take time off from raising their sheep, cattle, their farms, raising their crops, etc., in order to hunt down runaway slaves. And so once slavery ended, 1865, once the war is over, then we enter a period called Reconstruction. And during this period of Reconstruction, and a little bit after that, those slave patrol members formulated different types of groups, which we would now call police. And they were formulated. This is mostly in the South. There was a different format and system, not too far off in the North, called the Night Watchman. All of these groups were whether you're a member of the Night Watchman, again, longer history I'm not going to get into, but this is the beginnings of this. The Night Watchman in the North, the slave patrols in the South had one main component, and that was the protection of property. In the South, it was about capturing runaway property, and sometimes in the South, they would go into the North and try to get Black folks who were, number one, run away, or number two, free Black folks and try to enslave them, because slavery was just such a profitable thing. So now Representative Jasmine Crockett has stated that these forms of raids are slave patrols, those who are going out here trying to hunt down those people who are working, shouldn't be here and working illegally. So I have not listened to this. Let's listen to a little bit of this. We're not going to play it all, but here we go.
Involved. Joining me now in studio, Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas. She's on the Oversight and Judiciary Committees. Welcome. Nice to see you in person again.
It's good to see you too.
Yield man. You're a civil rights lawyer. Just give me a little context here. Yield man is not really what I want to hear from the Speaker of the House.
Well, first of all, I do want to go back to your monologue, because you pointed out the number of Democratic cities.
Yep.
Let me be clear. Every single mayor that you laid out is a Black mayor.
Right.
Let me be clear that there is a high number of African Americans in each and every one of these cities. These are some of our most Black populated cities in this country. So when people say the race baiting or whatever they want to say, these are just the facts.
Right.
You are specifically going after Black run cities, and you are associating crime with Black folks. So there is no surprise when we ended up with a situation where there was a tragedy that occurred on one day, and then the next day the threats were rolling in at HBCUs.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, when you talk about morale,
that threat was obviously Charlie Kirk and a situation that happened there. And next thing you know, these people want to target MAGA individuals, want to target HBCUs and the threats against them, even though Black folks had nothing to do with the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk.
When you talk about crime and you talk about how we're using our armed forces, we currently have allies that are looking at the United States and wondering what we are going to do. So instead of understanding that Russia is not our friend, when they decide that they're going to mess with one of the NATO allies, Poland, we're kind of like, we don't really know what happened. Or when we have Israel that ends up doing something to Qatar, and Qatar is looking at us and saying, hey, United States, like, where are you?
Yeah, we have 10,000 troops there in Qatar.
But we also got our troops going around picking up trash.
Yeah.
Like,
it was wild. trying to assassinate someone in a foreign country that we're allied with. Come on now. What is up with that?
I don't know where our readiness stands. And I am very concerned, especially since, as it relates to our foreign affairs, this guy was upset because he wasn't invited to go hang out with all the other dictators. So I will say that, yes, we have a problem with this president, but this president cannot do this stuff by himself. So thank you for playing the clip of the Speaker of the House, who is the leader of those that are going to just bend the knee to him. They are not honoring their oath. And that is the only thing that I am asking every single elected leader to do, is honor your oath to the people that elected you and put you into power, instead of doing whatever it is that he wants you to do.
It's uniquely unconservative and un-Republican for Mike Johnson to say to mayors or people in America to yield to the military, right? This goes back to Roman times. People do not want to be policed by the military. They respect the National Guard for what the National Guard does.
Yes.
They don't need them in their cities.
No. I mean, when you look at so many parts of our Constitution, it is about whether or not the government is coming in. And that's when you take to the Second Amendment. I mean, like, that is what it actually was laid out about.
Right. Nobody says that about the Second Amendment. Yield, man.
No, they don't. Not to mention, it is not very conservative to do this big government thing.
Right.
This is the biggest amount of government that you could have. Not to mention, you mentioned that it's not really clear why he's not going into Chicago now. Well, I have a guess. He has a governor that is actually resisting. So now we're looking
at an important point. Shifts to Memphis and New Orleans, where the one person who can push back, the governor, is on. Well,
not exactly. Yeah. The people that can push back will not push back. Yeah. In addition to that, when you look at Memphis, a lot of people don't know what's been going on in Memphis. What's been going on is that the people are pushing back against Elon Musk. Elon Musk has these data centers that have now been tied to polluting their communities and causing them harm. And so they are against these data centers. So now this is yet another way to do something for Elon Musk.
Which is kind of weird, because when he talked about the head of Union Pacific, it's like you should maybe just pretend that this isn't just your corporate friends who are causing you to deploy the U.S. military at taxpayer expense
against them,
so that a merger can take place. Like, he literally said it all. He said all the words, Donald Trump.
And that's a little bit of it, right? Employing taxpayer dollars. Your taxpayer dollars are now going into, instead of safety and security for the nation, which the military should be doing, it's going into ensuring that the will of the political elite in the 1% is being taken care of. This is important here.
I talked to Justin Pearson yesterday from Memphis. And one of the smart things about people who come from cities where there are crime rates is they don't rely on these statistics that say violent crime is down by X percentage. They realize that violent crime is a bad thing.
Exactly.
Everybody thinks so.
Exactly.
And the ways in which you undercut violent crime are through things that happen in communities, through gun violence protection. Yeah. Those are not the things that are happening here. So Justin Pearson was all about the fact that, we got a crime problem. We're really happy to have the federal government's help. Yeah. But this doesn't ever solve that problem.
No, it doesn't.
I've said that before. I'll say it again. I get pushback about it. You want to solve violent crimes. You want to solve all these different types of crime. You have to invest in mental health. You have to invest in different crime control strategies, things for the young people to do, anti-gang measures, education, jobs, job training programs, mental health. Again, these are things you have to invest in. K through 12 education, and then even some college scholarships. When they cut back on all these different types of programs, next thing you know, violent crime sparks up. So that is how you deal with these types of measures. A little bit more of this, because I don't want to spend. She probably won't say it till the end here, but I wanted to hear what she had to say about the ICE agents running around here.
Like data, they don't like facts. They absolutely detest these things. But even when you look at what Maxwell Frost did, Maxwell Frost led the way as to the creation of the Gun Violence Prevention Office within the White House. Yep. What did Donald Trump do?
Really, really successful until January 20th.
What did Donald Trump do? He absolutely did. Yeah. He got rid of it. And so we have the data that shows what it takes to bring this down. We also know that in these budgets where he's going out and he's saying, yes, give more money to ICE. And yes, I do want my ballroom. And yes, I do want this $400 million plane that is unconstitutional, that will cost the American people $1 billion to retrofit. Yes, he can find all the money for that while taking away the programs that law enforcement agencies are relying on. All those grants, he's like, we don't need those anymore. So it is a farce. It is this appearance of I am doing something when in reality it's not, because he loves this reality show type of situation. So it's like, let me give you the image of protecting you. Let me give you the image of policing. But the reality is that I am not making you any safer. We know as we've seen this over policing as it relates to ICE, as well as these criminal acts that are actually being perpetrated by ICE. We just saw that someone was killed in Chicago.
Yep.
So like, I don't know who is bringing more crime to the streets right now, especially when it comes to ICE. So the over policing has never worked. And
it's
he
just
doesn't want to use.
like, we know it doesn't work, right? We know in cities where crime has been reduced, it's been reduced through, it's a number of things at the same time.
Exactly.
One of which is poverty reduction.
Absolutely.
Right. And poverty reduction.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said here. Poverty reduction. You have to do that.
Programs have been killed.
Yeah.
Under the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
And the Doge cuts.
And poverty is on its way up.
SNAP has been cut.
Yeah.
Who's fraudulently using SNAP? Like, what do you do? What do you trade off your $6 for?
Correct. Your $6 a day.
Yeah.
Like, these are the people that are getting rich off of the federal government.
But that's conceptually our problem, right? That we are scraping every last dollar. We're squeezing every last dollar out of people who can least afford it.
Exactly.
So that the merger can go through with Union Pacific.
Exactly. But that's everything that they're doing. Everything is about the billionaires. Like, everything that we've seen from this big ugly bill, it's about making sure that they have more. When we have seen this transfer of wealth, it's already taken place before a lot of the provisions in that bill have actually gone into effect. We have a historic transfer of wealth that has gone up and not come down. And yes, we know that trickle down economics doesn't work either. But you speak about
As you speak in facts here, all this type of stuff is well known, well documented. Why people continue to fight against this narrative is very interesting.
Poverty, and you speak about crime. As someone who is a public defender, I can tell you that I better understand some of the things that end up allowing for crime to proliferate in certain communities. And I do want to make this distinction. Just because there is crime taking place does not necessarily mean that it is a criminal. There is a difference. There are people that literally are engaging in crime out of necessity, and they have, defenses that they can wage and things like that. But there are people that are saying, listen, I need to take care of my child. And so I need to get this formula. I need to get these diapers, and I'm going to do what I've got to do. But the reality is that we could do something like making sure that SNAP benefits are going to be available to them. We could make sure that there are going to be job opportunities.
We could not throw them off Medicaid.
Correct. Right. Because what's going to happen in a country, especially when we look at the state of Texas, where over 5 million are already uninsured, right? So you start to throw people off of their health care, the little health care that they've got. When we look at medical debt, which administration was trying to make sure that they could wipe off medical debt? It was the previous administration, the Biden-Harris administration, because they understood the things that literally would sit atop people and really put them into bad positions, whether it was their student loan debt or whether it was their medical debt. But they were doing the things to make sure that people could really feel like they were living in the land of the free and the land of opportunity.
When we come back, you're a civil rights lawyer, so I want to talk to you about the Fourth Amendment a little bit, because the Supreme Court made a big decision about the rules that ICE immigration have to follow in Los Angeles. This is important to everybody in this country. It's not Los Angeles specific. The Supreme Court had one of its shadow docket decisions, which are kind of dodgy because you don't get a real explanation. And this one is about ICE raids in Los Angeles and the ability for ICE to kind of just roll people up, right? Because of accent or ethnicity or what they look or where they happen to be if they're gathered outside Home Depot. Supreme Court said,
I'm pretty sure I covered this.
That was okay. Which is kind of wild because the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution says it's not okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting, as we sit here in New York, I can think back to a time in which there was stop and frisk.
Yes, that's correct.
And I could think back to a time in which that was found to be unconstitutional.
That's right.
And it was considered an unreasonable search, as we know the Fourth Amendment stands for. And now it's almost like this argument that the Republicans have been making that somehow if you are not an American citizen, that you are not afforded the same rights under the Constitution. Like, I've got colleagues that debate whether or not they are entitled to due process. And it's like, actually, they are. Like, it's not debatable. But they are trying to make it debatable. They are trying to make it seem like, well, if you're an American citizen, you get it. But if you're not an American citizen, you don't get it. And that's why we saw Donald Trump just randomly kicking people out of this country and not giving them their day in court. And we know that even American citizens have been rounded up in that. And so that is what's so dangerous about this opinion, is that we know that you don't have to pass an accent test to actually be a U.S. citizen, right? So this idea that
well, maybe now you do.
You can look at somebody and say, I'm looking at you and I think that you don't belong. Well, who is it that does belong? That's my question. Because it seems like they are all about making sure if you don't have any melanin or very little, then you're the ones that look like you belong. And you can't look at somebody and know whether or not they are a U.S. citizen. So why is it okay for ICE to then go out and see somebody and look at them or hear them and say whether or not they're a U.S. citizen, to the extent that they are, in my opinion, violating their constitutional rights?
And for those people who don't fear that they'll be arrested in an immigration roundup because they look like they belong. This amendment, the idea that we've softened up around the Fourth Amendment, will one day come for you, because today it's about immigration. But if it could be about anything at this point.
I absolutely agree with that. If you don't fight for them today, and I'm not saying that I agree with people coming over here illegally and all that. And there's a book I've recommended to the back of the hiring line about how African Americans in particular suffer under immigration. But I don't I don't agree with the targeting of individuals, the erosion of our rights, the first, the fourth, the fifth, the first. I don't agree with any of that stuff, right? These are all bedrock foundational type of things. And once you start to erode them and nobody stands up, they are going to come for you next.
No, and again, I think
you might be a subversive.
Well, yeah, and I also think that we may end up going back to stop and frisk. I think that they may end up relitigating that and then just decide that they want to go into certain communities and they want to start rounding up certain people, whether it's that you wear a long black trench coat or whether it's that you are black. Like, I think that they may end up relitigating that issue specifically because of this opinion. So I think it's a slippery slope.
And of course, the complication here is because of the shadow docket stuff. You would think that if you're going to attack something that is an amendment in the Constitution and you're going to say that there's something wrong with it, I'd like to have a thorough airing of that.
Yeah. No oral argument.
Yeah.
On this issue, not hearing where the sides are coming from, not hearing from the justices and having them ask questions and really test it and to make sure that it stands up to constitutional muster.
Yeah.
No, it's a very dangerous thing to do, especially in this time of over policing by this out of control.
And that's the issue, right? That's where I'm trying to figure out how can people who like Donald Trump, don't like Donald Trump, understand that he seems to be building a police force that is not subject to the normal rules that either policing or military should be subject to. It's sort of a police force that's lacking accountability.
No, there is no accountability. And it's going after its American people, right? Like, the idea that any of us want to be unsafe in this country is absolutely absurd, right? I don't care what your political affiliation is. I don't care what your cultural background is. None of us want to be unsafe, but we're not looking at the facts. We're not looking at the fact that immigrants, regardless of how many times you're going to cherry pick and say, well, there was this one immigrant that was here illegally and they ended up killing this one person. Well, for every immigrant that you have an example of, I'll raise you at least 2 to 5 white supremacists, if not more, right? So like, you've got to look at who is it that is committing the crime.
Or even those who are good immigrants, quote unquote, who have not committed any crimes, who are staying here, whether it's past their due or whatever, and are still not doing anything that is illegal and just living a good life. So everyone that they can pick out and say, yeah, okay, this person has harmed an American citizen, whoever those would be. They can also pick out those who have demonstrated some level of civility and are trying to assimilate, et cetera, et cetera.
Who is it that is committing certain types of crime? And then you need to figure out why. And then you go in and you say, this is how you reduce it. You and I talked about poverty, right? So if you are doing things that are going to increase poverty, whether we're talking about your terrible tariffs that are illegal as well, or whether we're talking about the fact that you are defunding healthcare, you are defunding food, you are now going after education and defunding education and want to get rid of the Department of Education as a whole, or you want to take our tax dollars and make sure you send it off to the private schools that don't have to take every single child, you are definitely compounding the issue. You are not fixing anything. You are making things worse because you have no idea what you're doing. You messed us up before. We ended up having the worst job numbers when you were in the last time. And guess what? We got the worst job numbers now, especially when you start to look at the Black community. So listen, if we want to figure out how we are going to be safer, we probably need people that have actual intelligence and actually will pay attention to data and facts and go from there. But what they're doing right now, it almost feels like, you know, I've seen the memes about the purge and all these things. But as somebody who understands history, when I see ICE, I see slave patrols. Now, I never lived through the slave patrol period. But if you know the history of policing in this country, then you understand that they were born out of slave patrols. And now with the Supreme Court saying this, it's almost like you can just go grab them up. That is what they're saying. And that is a problem. We all should have a problem with that. But when you don't want to teach American history that includes Black history, then you lose out on the benefit of understanding that we have been down this road before and it was not good. And we fixed it once. And it is a shame that we are relitigating this and we're going to have to fix it again.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Could not have said it better myself, even though I tried. So she alluded to the shooting in Chicago. We're going to look at this particular body cam footage. Listen, I am very much concerned about this administration and the things that they are doing, saying, want to do, want to say, et cetera, right? Body cam. Let's move on here. Body camera clips show aftermath of ICE shooting man in Chicago. Do we have I don't think we had the full actual clips here.
It's you? Oh, okay.
Body cam footage has emerged showing the moments after a deadly shooting in Franklin Park, Illinois earlier this month, involving U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents, and it complicates the picture of the event presented by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The shooting on September 12th of 38-year-old Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, a father of two, was the most violent case in a wave of aggressive ICE actions as part of the Trump administration's Operation Midway Blitz, a surge in immigration enforcement in the Chicago area that began earlier this month. Federal authorities said Villegas Gonzalez had, quote, refused to follow law enforcement commands and drove his car at law enforcement officers during a vehicle stop. They said an ICE agent was hit by the car and was dragged a significant distance and was fearing for his own life. But in the body cam footage, the agent, in a bullet-resistant police vest and torn jeans, described his injuries as nothing major. An ambulance also arrived for the ICE agents, but neither was seen to receive any treatment in the body cam video.
From us right now? I think we're good now. Okay. Shooken up. Yeah, absolutely.
The video Reuters obtained Tuesday was part of a public records request. It remains unclear whether the ICE agents will be subject to an internal review. Body cam footage captured one apparent policeman saying,
A federal shooting. They're not going to investigate a federal officer. Investigate a federal officer.
Department would not investigate a federal officer.
No, because it's a federal shooting. They're not going to investigate a federal officer. You have to wait till that.
Both
Yeah, so the city officials are not going to investigate a federal officer. So are they going to do some type of internal review? And I'll close the tab here. Let me see if they have some type of go back to the customs and ICE. We'll see if they have some type of complaint procedure or etc. All right, let me take this down for a second here. And let's go back to the ICE page here. This is the ICE leadership here. Todd Lyons and all these different types of people. No people of color up there. Interesting. Interesting. Three ladies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. Interesting. So I don't see any type of ways to complain, or if they have a, let's see, acting director, deputy director, chief of staff, acting executive, associate director, Homeland Security, investigations, management and administration. She might be the person to call. Office of Professional Responsibility. It might be her right here. Office of Professional Responsibility. Let's see. Who holds ICE professional standards through a multidisciplinary approach of security, inspections, and investigations to promote organizational health, integrity, and accountability across the agency. So this is the person you would need to contact, Ms. Fenton here, to try to make sure that everything is on the up and up. Or so I'm assuming they have some type of internal process to ensure that things are on the up and up. All right, so that's that. All right, so let's go back here to the rest of the body worn camera footage, and we'll finish this off here.
Both Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum have called for further investigations into the ICE agents' tactics. Federal authorities had said Villegas Gonzalez was in the U.S. illegally. He left his hometown of Irimbo in Mexico's Michoacan state 18 years ago for the U.S. On the day of his death, Villegas Gonzalez was dropping off his two children at a school and a daycare located blocks away from the incident.
Now, when I had Professor William Lopez on from the University of Michigan, we were speaking about this. We were speaking about this and talking about exactly this particular type of individual, right? Where this guy probably was in the wrong concerning the strict measures of the law. In other words, what I'm saying is he had been here. He left, they said, 18 years ago, probably in the U.S. for a better part of 18 years, if not all of it, the full 18 years. Had established, was bringing his kids to school, this, that, and the other. And if he's going to get stopped by ICE and he knows he's going to get deported and never see his children again, this may have caused him to resist, to flee, to try to run the officer down. I'm not excusing any of that type of behavior, but you know, we got to take a look at, again, when I as an academic, and when I'm teaching these classes, when I teach criminology, forensic psychology, or any other type of criminal justice courses, I'm not just look at the crime in the administration of justice, but I want to take a look at how this thing came to be and how we can prevent it for the future. And the way to prevent it for the future may be to grant asylum to these people who have good histories, and been here for a certain amount of time, and all that. They've got kids here. They obviously have some form of investment here in the U.S. Just something to think about. It's just something. I know people are not going to like that. And again, I am one who's advocating for the book, how immigration, excuse me, back to the hiring line, how immigration. Do I have that picture up here? How immigration. I don't have the picture. I'm going to put a picture of the book up here. No, I don't have a picture of the book. Dang it. So this is the book, Back of the Hiring Line: A 200-Year History of Immigration, Surges, Employer Bias, and Depression of Black Wealth. Certainly, Black folks are hurt the most by these type of incidents. But, we have to ask, what is the cost-benefit analysis of police officers getting hurt and families being torn apart? And obviously, his children might probably be able to stay, but are they going to be placed in the foster care? There's a lot of work has to be done behind this, and I'm not going to pretend to sit up here and have the answer. What I, as a, my opinion, what should be done? Listen, if these people, again, if they're here for 18 years and they have no criminal history, not running to police, and they're viable citizens, their kids should be are here enrolled in public schools, and presumably they're hardworking citizens, whether it's under the table or not. I think that they should be allowed a certain form of amnesty. I don't see a problem with that. But those other individuals who are obviously causing problems, yeah, obviously get rid of them. All right. Last story for today, and we'll call it for today. Let's see here. This is what we know. This was the shooting at the ICE facility. I'm not going to read this full story here, but the shooting at the ICE facility. What we know about the Dallas shooting at the ICE facility. A shooter opened fire at a U.S. immigration and let's see here. Let's see. A customs enforcement facility in Dallas Wednesday morning, leaving one detainee dead and two others wounded. No law enforcement officials were hurt. The gunman died of a self-inflicted wound, the authorities said. Three people familiar with the investigation who were not authorized to speak publicly identified the shooter as Joshua Jean. Department of Homeland Security officials, along with some state and national leaders, have said the shooting was targeted attack on law enforcement agents. They had pointed to ammunition to the shooter left behind that had the phrase anti-ICE in blue writing, but officials have not released other details about the shooter or his potential motive, and the New York Times has not independently verified the DHS claims. And this is important because a lot of us are not trusting this administration and what they're saying. I'm going to do a video about more about what's going on with Charlie Kirk. Here's what we know about the shooting so far. What happened in the attack? The Dallas police responded to a call for assistance at 6:40 a.m. around the ICE field office. Office officials determined after their initial investigation that a gunman, whom they described as a sniper, had fired at the ICE building from a nearby rooftop. The attacker fired indiscriminately, they said, including at a van where the victims were hit. That sounds a little fishy to me. I mean, if you're targeting ICE agents, why would you shoot indiscriminately unless he was just a bad shot? Or why would you not shoot at the agents? Or maybe the agents were getting out of the car, or out of the van. It seems a little off to me. One detainee died and two others were in critical condition. Officials have not released the names of the victims, but Mexico's foreign ministry said in a statement that one of the people injured is a Mexican national. Following the shooting, Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, directed the department to enhance security protocols at ICE facilities nationwide. What we know about the suspect, one of the people familiar with the investigation said Mr. Jean was 29. Public records show that he was raised in a suburb of Dallas and as recently as a few months ago had been living with his parents who are from Kansas. The family home is in a rural area north of Dallas and Fort Worth that is rapidly developing. Mr. John's political leanings are unclear from what has been uncovered so far. On two Reddit accounts, he wrote mostly about video games, cars, South Park, and Mary Jane. He voted in the Democratic Party in 2020 in Texas, records show, but he also was registered to vote as an independent in Oklahoma, where his parents owned property and where he voted in 2024 general election. Mr. John was indicted in 2016 for selling marijuana. A few years later, he was released from court supervision for charges in the proceedings were dismissed. I'm not going to read the rest of that. I'm just showing that there was a certain problem here. Location of the gunman. Maybe I will read this. The Dallas building where the attack has occurred on 25 ice fields office across the country. The Dallas building where the attack occurred is one of 25 ICE field offices across the country. Part of the building is an office used by ICE employees for administrative work. The other part is a processing center for immigrants who have been arrested and are booked into ICE custody. Detainees who are brought to the building usually undergo fingerprinting, a biometric screening, and paperwork. They are then released or kept in a hold room while they await transfer to a long-term facility. The hold room, a waiting area with 3 or 4 cells, has an average of 55 people a day at the Dallas facility. Most detainees spend less than 24 hours in the building before they are moved elsewhere. Let's see. Wednesday's episode was the last of the second shooting in an ICE facility in Texas this year. On July 4th, a police officer was shot outside an ICE detention center in Alvarado, Texas, about 28 miles south of Fort Worth. More than a dozen people have been charged in connection with the shooting. A dozen people, which officials have called a coordinated plan to ambush local and federal law enforcement officers. The officer was wounded in the neck but survived. 3 days after the Alvarado shooting, a gunman opened fire at a U.S. Customs and Border Protection station in McAllen, in a South Texas border town. 3 people, including 2 officers, were injured. Homeland Security officials have blamed such episodes as hateful rhetoric against immigration officers, calling for the end of what they say is demonization of them. President Trump pointed the finger in the Wednesday shooting at the deranged radical leftists, calling on Democrats to stop this rhetoric against ICE. The shootings came amid months of unrest surrounding Mr. Trump's escalation of immigration enforcement. Yeah, so this is a problem. But let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Certainly I don't agree with the attacks on these ICE officers. I want them to be safe and all that. But you know, this isn't going anywhere soon. And what I'm fearful of, what I'm mostly fearful of, is if we don't, get a hold on whatever is going on here with this and whatever the hateful rhetoric is on both sides. If we don't get a hold on that, then eventually it's going to come for all of us. U.S. citizens, Black folks, women, LGBT. So got to get a hold of all that. So let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Hit me in the comments section. Until next time, much love and peace.